We're here to idea everyone, to fire up your curiosity and connect you with the people and ideas that shape our world. Watch, listen, understand, connect, create. Let's move the human story forward together.
Hello and welcome to The Poetry of Science, a podcast which provides insight into new scientific research via the medium of poetry. I'm your host, Dr. Sam Illingworth, and each week I'll be introducing you to some of the latest scientific findings and sharing a selection of science-themed poetry. If you enjoy this podcast, then please consider giving it a rating and leaving some feedback in your podcast directory of choice. And if you really enjoy it, then why not share it with a friend? After all, we could all do with a little bit more poetry in our lives. In this episode, I'll be exploring new research, which has found that ancient pathogens emerging from melting ice and permafrost risk eroding ecosystems. In the icy gloom where old gods sleep, microbes lie in wait with jealous, frozen rage, aching to be freed by the warmth of our embrace. In ancient dreams they writhe and thrash, dancing like ghosts with careless future selves. Other times they shift and thrum against frozen fraying bars, feeling for faults, longing for change. In this warming world where chaos creeps and fictions melt like ice. This poem is inspired by recent research published in the journal PLOS Computational Biology, which found that ancient microorganisms released by thawing permafrost could potentially invade, evolve, and impact present-day ecosystems with substantial ecological risks, despite the low probability of such events. The concept of ancient microorganisms being reintroduced into the environment because of permafrost thawing is no longer relegated to the realm of speculative fiction, but has become a legitimate subject of scientific inquiry. There exists a genuine concern that microorganisms, including potentially pathogenic entities that have been encased in ice for millennia, could be released into contemporary ecosystems. The implications of such an event on current ecological communities and human health are complex and wide-ranging. There is a crucial need to understand whether these re-emerging microbes could potentially invade, proliferate, and disrupt present-day habitats, or whether their impact would remain negligible. To better understand this phenomenon, a group of researchers used digital simulations to study the effects of these ancient microbes on modern ecosystems. They created a digital virus like these ancient organisms and introduced it into a simulated future community. What they discovered was that these ancient invaders often survived and even evolved within the new community. In rare cases, they became exceptionally dominant, and in a few unpredictable cases, they led to considerable losses or gains in the total number of species in the ecosystem. This suggests that even with a low probability of such an event, given the large number of ancient microorganisms potentially being released, the risk is substantial. As such, this study highlights the potential of seemingly far-fetched threats to become real influences on ecological change. Now that you've heard the science, let me read the poem to you again. In the icy gloom where old gods sleep, microbes lie in wait with jealous, frozen rage, aching to be freed by the warmth of our embrace. In ancient dreams they writhe and thrash, dancing like ghosts with careless future selves. Other times they shift and thrum against frozen fraying bars, feeling for faults, longing for change in this warming world where chaos creeps and fictions melt like ice. In this section of the podcast, I'd like to share a poem written by another poet on a topic related to the science that has been discussed so far. In this episode, I'll be reading Yeast by Roddy Lumsden. Roddy Lumsden was a Scottish poet who was born in St Andrews in 1966 and found early literary influence from his family and the works of prominent poets. His poetry collections include the T.S. Eliot shortlisted So Glad I'm Me, published in 2017, demonstrated a unique blend of formal tradition, streetwise language, and evocative regret. Lumsden's work, described as a dance between hedonism and mortality, was noted for its musical rhetoric and linguistic antics. Besides being a prolific writer, Lumsden was a respected editor, teacher, and puzzle writer. He held several significant roles in the poetry community, including serving as poetry editor of Salt Publishing. Lumsden passed away in 2020. Yeast, by Roddy Lumsden. A word you can't quite say without itching, flinching. It's not easy to ignore its squirming appetite, stay your primal juddering. And yes, at night each microbe gurns in the salty sea of gut and gullet, born again, boldly eats as you ate it, brews its own queasy tea of proto-raunch, which it will quickly sate, birthing wanderlusting vigours as yet unknown to microscience. They sashay, set out for the toes, or gape through your eyes at your drooping lids, your fat bunch of keys at this internal motel's boss, bellhop, lackey, sat in the throne of his slumber, a mercy seat. Thank you for listening to the Poetry of Science.
Thank you very much for being with us for this episode of the ideaXme show. ideaXme is a global platform. Our mission is to move the human story forward by sharing knowledge of the future. You can find us on all major audio networks at www.radioideaXme.com, on YouTube and Vimeo. Please subscribe.